Hey there, folks. It's Eric from Support Adventure, and in this video, I'm going to talk about time tracking on MSP technicians' timesheets and how much of this you should do and how much slack you should give them. Now, basically, achieving a good balance of this is essential to making your staff members feel organized in their work on the help desk. So too much time tracking will lead to stress, actually. If they have to track every minute of every single day, it's going to be stressful, because especially if you're making them do things like answer the phone while already working on tickets and all that stuff. And too little time tracking will mean that if you don't insist on having them track time in a certain relatively accurate, systematized way, then basically you're not going to know what they're doing. And especially with remote MSP staff, there needs to be a policy here on what the targets are, and they need to be reasonable. So running a staffing firm for MSPs that exclusively has people working remotely, we know that basically a timesheet is all that the MSPs are going to see if someone's doing a good job most of the time. So we insist that ticket notes on one hand are very thorough and document what the person has done with their day and what they've done on each ticket. So from a business perspective, a technical perspective, and everything. And we also want the timesheet to look relatively like they've gotten days work like they're paying us for. So basically, what's a good balance? Because I mentioned already, and I'll mention again, tracking every minute. Like, so you've got someone working 9 to 6 and they get 1 hour lunch. So from 1 to 2. And if you're insisting that they track every single minute between 9 and 1 and 2 and 6 on service tickets, on ConnectWise or whatever your ticket system is, if you expect that, it's a level of micromanagement of their time which is inconceivably oppressive. Basically, I mean, especially working from home, some people have children and partners that live in the same place as them. And are you going to have tickets for them talking to them? Are you going to have tickets for when they go out for a smoke ticket, tickets for making a coffee ticket, tickets for going to the washroom? Is there going to be a ticket for that? And if there's not, then essentially, if you ask them to track every minute or else they're not doing the job correctly, you're telling them that their job is to lie to you, to lie about the time that they're spending on the client's tickets, to bill clients for, if you're still billing clients for time, to bill clients for time that they've spent doing other stuff and all that stuff. I mean, you have to have a policy here, because if you start calling your technicians up and saying, hey, what were you doing between 11:40 and 11:47 in the day? You didn't log that time, therefore you didn't reach your target of 8 hours of log time today. Guess what? Either they're lying to you or they're some sort of superhuman worker. And so that's in the case that there's no increment. If there's 15-minute increments, and every time they chase up a ticket, that counts as 15 minutes, and every time they work 23 minutes on a ticket, it counts as 30 minutes and stuff like that, then, 8 hours a day could very well be achievable. And it could very well be like, fair to have someone under that expectation. On the other hand of the spectrum, we have some MSPs that don't track time at all on their help desk. And so there's not really a lot to distinguish in the statistics of a ticket that took 5 minutes to resolve and one that took an hour and a half to resolve. And the people who naturally manage to make tickets disappear quickly or get it off their plate, they'll look better on the statistics. And it's just not fair. And you won't have accurate ideas of which clients are consuming the most time, which technicians are wasting the time. Because if someone bills, like, you need to track time, guys, because if someone bills an hour and a half on a ticket and they don't have thorough ticket notes on what that hour and a half was spent doing, there might be something you need to optimize there. So you need the oversight to have them tracking time in some way. And also we recommend having a guideline, a rough guideline that gives them an idea of what's expected. 4 lines of ticket notes for every 15 minutes spent, because that's the level of sort of resolution of ticket notes that you're looking for. So say it's a password reset. Basically, User called in. I answered the phone. That's one line, something like that. User requested password reset for the account. That's second line. Logged into panel, reset password, confirmed user was able to log into the system after I reset the password, ticket resolved. That's already 5 lines for a 15-minute password reset. So basically you have to tell people, if you're not doing at least 4 things every 15 minutes, what am I paying you for? So that's a time tracking metric. And yeah, so what's a fair amount of time tracking? To allow the sort of day to breathe a little bit, because not everybody's going to be tracking time all the time. Now, I would really encourage you to have them track all the time that they spend working on a ticket and the related documentation, full stop. So all the time they spend researching a ticket before they call a client, if they haven't, picked it up and it's a hot ticket, they usually research, log into this, that's trackable time. All the time they spend on the time with phone with the client, all the time they spend waiting for something to complete, in a lot of cases, unless they're doing something else on another ticket somewhere else, needs to be tracked on the ticket. And all the time they spend updating documentation, updating the ticket notes, writing the ticket notes after the ticket is completed, is all time that needs to be tracked. You need to define this in writing. At Support Adventure, we like clear expectations. We like technicians to know what their job looks like when it's being done well. And you can only do that by putting expectations in writing. Otherwise, you're like somebody's mother telling them to brush their teeth when you're nagging people about stuff. If you give people clear expectations, a checklist of what the job done right looks like, and some accountability towards fulfilling those expectations, consistent accountability, then it's fair. But if you're going on these constantly shifting and sort of verbally imparted expectations that the enforcement of which depends on the mood of the service desk manager, business owner, and stuff like that, you can expect that it'll be much more difficult to get your staff to behave consistently with tickets, because you're behaving less consistently and the requirements are less explicit. So it's hard to enforce people adhering to the sort of consistency that you should want, and therefore it's a little bit more difficult to give your clients a consistent experience because the actions of the technicians are not consistent. So what's the amount of consistency that you want on log time per day? What we view as fair is if it's every minute time tracking, about 65% of the day, or if it's 15-minute increments, 80% of the day, 90%, pretty humane, because then, there will be some time lost in it. The thing you want to avoid explicitly is technicians spending time on an issue, related documentation, research, and stuff like that, and not logging that time on the ticket, because you can't bill a client for that. You can't, and a lot of companies want to have a review with their clients every few months and say, this is how much time we've spent working on your tickets. And that's why you're paying us this monthly set fee to manage your systems, and this is the statistics. And if we had billed you by the hour, it would have cost you this much. Therefore, this MSP monthly package is really a deal. So don't complain about it. So you want the technicians to have an accurate, if you're billing them by the hour, it has to be accurate, of course. If you're billing them a set fee, you want to be able to justify that by, hopefully, a lot of MSPs, want to be able to justify that by how much time they spent on the client systems and stuff like that. So rounding up to the nearest 15 minutes is my best practice, and expecting about 80% of the day to be logged with rounding up is my best practice, because that lets people breathe. It lets them go make a coffee. It lets them, visit the washroom, spend a little time in there, which, in the middle of the workday, they're probably thinking about your tickets and stuff during that time anyway. And a lot of the time that people spend thinking about stuff, feeling that they have a good pace of the day, it's called letting the day breathe. And the best service I ever gave any client was my first MSP gig. This was in 2013. I had already spent, 15 years being a solo IT practitioner, doing on-site mostly and remote. But then when I worked for an MSP for the first time, I was working from home in an environment like this, and I was working for 15 hours a week. And the amount of time I had to breathe, write songs on my guitar, slow cook in the kitchen, that led to great service. So letting the help desk breathe. I mean, I understand you hire people full time remote. You want to get a full day work out of them. That's fine. But define what a full day is. And it's not tracking every single minute that they're not at lunch on the ticketing system, because that level of micromanagement, and if you start building issues, making issues out of a deficiency of that, it's an unfair bar that people can almost never reach without lying to you. So if you create that sort of environment, and that sort of culture of micromanagement and sort of like unachievable expectations, don't be surprised when the best and most creative and most intelligent staff will leverage their other opportunities and um, go elsewhere for employment and work. So make sure that you have a way of tracking the time so you know what people are doing and you're keeping them organized with their time and keeping them writing those good ticket notes that you need to, document the work of your company. But make sure you're not expecting too much of them. That's how I would sum it up. Not one extreme nor the other, and a system that's consistent and fair that you can hold people consistently accountable to follow. Thanks a lot. If you want to hear about who you could hire to work remotely for your company through Supportive Venture, we get about 50 to 70 applicants a day, and we have a great system for filtering them and presenting you only the best candidates on video. And you can choose who you want to interview, and it's a lot cheaper than hiring someone in the US or UK or Canada or Ireland or Australia or countries like that, because we have people all over the world. A lot of us are expats. Myself, my name is Eric. I live in Belgrade, Serbia. And from working with this model with more than 40 MSPs at this point, we have had a really lot of lessons, like the ones I gave you in this video, about how to keep staff happy, because we hear both sides, the MSP and the MSP staff's perspective on stuff, and we actually have created best practices like this out of having the mediating role between staff, companies, providing better staff to companies, and providing better structure to staff. So thanks a lot, Eric, Supportive Venture. I'll catch you guys later.